following you on the map. We have 5 minutes before we start. Any questions or comments? Queries? You're all experts. Well, it was my first trip to any America, unless you count Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii, but that doesn't count, right? I was in Canada for 3 months. Actually, he set it up. He was living there, so he invited me over. And it was okay. There's no people anywhere. It's weird, like you walking around on the streets and you don't see anybody. And then here, you just assume that if you go somewhere, you can always get a bottle of water. Well, I walked for like 3 hours, no shop or nothing. So, yeah, no people. It's kind of sad that in Canada, you're not allowed to have dogs off the lead. So I found all these like little woods around, woods and parks and places and quiet areas. And I'd be walking along and I'd come into a clearing or onto a path. There'd be somebody with their dog and they immediately grab their dog because they let the dog off the lead if no one's there. But as soon as somebody shows up, they have to grab the dog, and it's a bit of a shame that the dogs can't run around. That was my big impression of America. the dogs are always on a lead. Yeah. There was another thing, it's a bit stupid, but it's one of those things. I've been talking about Maya, the conceptual universe, and these are expectations is another word for it. How we expect the world to be. This is we construct it out of our concepts. So, and then as long as the world conforms to our expectations, then we are reasonably at ease. But when the world doesn't conform to our expectations, we get kind of jolted with attention, which is what a joke is. A joke will lull you into one story and then suddenly snap you into show you it was a different story. And so one of the expectations that I've always had is that the traffic comes from the right. And so several times when I got there, I'd be going to cross the road, I'd be looking right and the road's empty and I walk out and nearly get ploughed over. It's very discombobulating. So the one time I was trying to catch a bus and I couldn't quite tell where the bus is going. Google was saying the bus is there right now, and I was trying to figure out which one it is. And so I was in a kind of hurry, and I walked out onto this road, and there's no traffic ahead of me, and I stand in the middle of the road, like, well, is it that one or that one? I didn't realize there's all these cars backed up behind me. And I turned around, and I don't know, in Thailand, they'll just mow you down, right? Even a monk, they'll mow you down. But of course, they're Canadian, so they'll stop politely while I stand in the middle of the road, which was quite nice. But then, as I realized what I was doing and I got off the road and the cars started to go, the policeman came around and he wagged his finger at me like this. Which is fair enough. I guess I was in the wrong. He shouted something out the window. I don't know what it was. Yeah, you just have it. You have these expectations. You expect to be able to buy a bottle of water. You expect people around, and yeah. But otherwise, you know. Another thing, their bags of chips are massive. You get Lay here, right? The Lay chips, potato chips, which I call crisps. But, you know, because I'm proper English. Thai people can't say crisps. It's quite funny. We usually say kip. But in Canada, they're this big. The bags of chips are huge. And of course, the rule is that if you open a bag, you have to eat the entire bag. So.
Did you go to Hortons?
Tim Hortons, yes. There's a bit. Their coffee isn't freshly made. It comes from a machine. It's quite cheap, but it comes from a machine, like pre-made, which was. But otherwise, it's okay. Lots of them around. They're cheap. Yeah, they're okay.
Did you encounter American-style Buddhism?
No. There's very little where I was. Very little of anything. I went into Toronto and I gave a few talks in the Sri Lankan temple. But I'm always terrified of Sri Lankans because they really know their stuff. So I have to be really careful what I say around Sri Lankans. Yeah, but that was nice. But no, I didn't see any American-style Buddhism. I didn't see much of America. I went to Niagara Falls. We could see America. Apparently the Canadian side is better than the American side. And that was all a bit... It's the same falls. I mean, there's nothing... It's the same waterfall. Yeah, that was about it. I like the weather. It's probably around, when I got there, around 6 degrees at night, 25 in the day. It gets up to 25 and the Canadians are like, oh, we have to go somewhere with aircon. I'm like, what? This is a pleasant day in Thailand. And I liked the cold weather. The place where I was staying had this fantastic massage chair. And I've had them before, and they just kind of roll around on your back. You've been on that chair, right? And they just roll your back, and I'm a little unimpressed. But that thing, man, and it tips you, you sit on it, and then it tips you backwards, so your full weight is on your back. And it comes right around your butt and kind of gives you a butt massage. And it was expensive, right? It cost $12,000 or something, that chair. But yeah, once I discovered that.
It was right next to you.
Yeah, it's next to my room. Which is handy. Okay, let's sit, meditate. Is anybody new to meditation? Never done meditation before? Okay, everyone's good. So, settle yourself into your meditation posture. Feel free to carry on with the meditation system you are accustomed to. You may note anything that comes into your mind that distracts you from meditation. When distractions come, ideas, memories, thoughts, worries, try to hold that thing in your attention for a few minutes. What does it feel like? Where does it arise in the body? What is the thing and the reaction to the thing? Buddhist meditation is pure phenomenology, which means the thing that is being perceived is what's real. That thing has just arisen. It's about to pass away. So a thought arises, a thought of your family, your relationships, your visa, your elections, whatever it is, the thought comes into your mind, grabs your attention. Conceptually, that thing may be long-lasting, may be permanent, may be real, but perceptually, the phenomenon has just arisen in your attention. Full system awareness. You have that thought, the reaction to the thought, the feeling, liking and disliking, associated memory has a certain stickiness. How much attachment is there to pull you into it? So note the thing that has arisen. You hold it with a non-judgmental awareness. Don't follow into thinking, get lost in thought. See it and feel it. And be prepared for it to disappear. You can't hold anything in the mind for very long. It moves. Attention grabs a different object. Note this grabbing of one object after another object, one story after another story, one thought, feeling, smell, sight, perception after another. If it's possible, you can hold your mind back from any perceptions. Just mindful, just knowing. Allow the attention to disengage from all things. Grounded in the body. So for the final few minutes of the meditation, turn your attention to the idea, thought, and perception of loving kindness. Arouse this feeling any way that you can, thinking of people, figures, even animals, to whom you respect, for whom it's easy to arouse love, unconditional loving kindness. Making the attention bright, radiating from the center of your being, this beautiful mind state, sobana citta, radiating to all world beings. May they be happy, may they be peaceful, may they be free from suffering. Sabhe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha tejena rakang bandami sabhaso sababuddha nupawena sattaso ti bhawantute Sabhe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha tejena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabadhamma nupavena sattha soti bhawantute Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso sabbasangha nupavena sattha soti bhawantute. Okay, relax your posture. Can you all rouse the loving kindness? Does it come easily? I was just reading a few suttas. Buddha said, if you were to offer rice every morning and every evening and every afternoon for a month, I can't remember, a month or a week, the merit would not be equal to the amount of merit from one, I can't remember how to put it now, but it's quite a graphic description. The one tug on a cow's teat, if you spend that much effort generating loving kindness, that has more merit than offering rice for morning, afternoon and evening. So, it's supposed to be very meritorious. This word merit you find a lot in Thai, punya, and it's the opposite to papa, or in Thai, bab. And punya means to brighten, and papa means to darken, or the absence of light. So, the word merit is not a great translation for this, but you get the idea. It's that thing that brightens the heart and the soul. He also said, if you're interested, that unseen beings can't invade and disrupt your mind if you have loving kindness, which is interesting. Do unseen beings come and invade your mind very often? I don't know. Sometimes I've felt these things, but I never know if it's my imagination or not. So the topic this evening, mindfulness. There are a couple of misnomers with mindfulness, or mistakes that people made. It seems to be one of those terms. When I first started meditating and practice, I was 21. 34 years ago. Then it was quite a new thing. I had never heard of this term before, and so it was quite a revelation for me. I found this secret thing that nobody else seemed to know about, which made it all the more appealing. These days, the term mindfulness gets bandied around quite a lot. I've seen that British soldiers get trained in mindfulness, mindful gun shooting, mindful killing. I don't see why a soldier shouldn't practice mindfulness. I just hope that they're doing it, not killing, mindful. I hope it's the rest of the time. I guess most soldiers, most of the time, are just sitting around, talking, cooking food, and doing regular stuff. You know that Zen story about the guys, two monks, and they were smoking cigarettes, and one said, I think we shouldn't be smoking cigarettes. So they each went and asked the abbot, and they came back, and then one of them was smoking and the other one wasn't. And the one who was smoking said, the abbot said it was fine to smoke. And the other one said, well, I asked him and he said he can't smoke. So the first monk had asked the abbot, the second monk had asked the abbot, is it okay to smoke while we're meditating? And the abbot said, no way. And the other one said, is it okay to meditate while we're smoking? He said, yes, you should do that. So, yeah, you can bring mindfulness to everything, and this seems to get drawn on in modern day society. You have mindful pottery, mindful archery. Some friends in New Zealand were doing this. They go for archery practice every Sunday, and they do it mindfully. I told them, you know why the British had this tradition of doing archery every Sunday? It's because we invented the longbow, and the longbow is extremely hard to pull. And the reason we could beat the French, which of course is the entire reason for the English existence, is to beat the French. The French would fight the French, and the French had these short bows, you see, and the British had the long bows. They could shoot further and penetrate armor, and so we were always defeating the French. And the reason the French couldn't do it, are there any French people here, by the way? The reason the French couldn't fight back was it's really hard to draw a longbow. You have to train your entire life to have the necessary muscles and finger muscles and the skills. So the British had a training archery every Sunday, so we could draw the longbow. And that's how we beat you guys. Yeah, it's a pity it doesn't apply to football. So yeah, mindfulness gets put onto everything these days. You see mindful beach walking and mindful stargazing and various things. So mindfulness originally was not simply being aware of what you are doing. That's how it gets offered around, and that's how it's taught. You're supposed to be present with the thing you are doing and not absent from the thing you are doing. So you can drive your car, for example, but most of the time you're driving your car, your mind is absent, right? You're thinking about this and that and all kinds of different things. Hopefully, somewhere, how your body is still managing to drive the car while you are off thinking about other things. Did you ever wonder how that happens? Apparently modern day cars, they keep beeping you and giving you alerts and grabbing control of your steering wheel. And someone was complaining that they drive along a street, but it sees a street sign for a different street that says 30 miles an hour, and the car applied the brakes really hard. But it's for a different road. I don't know if... apparently a lot of people are complaining that modern day cars take over. Is that true? I don't know. I like the old British Leyland Mini. You're in charge of everything. You could feel it. My friend is an airline pilot, and he used to fly Boeing 747s, jumbo jets, and he really loved these, but they've made him change to the A380. And he said the difference between flying an Airbus and a Boeing is a Boeing, you pull the lever and it moves a flap and you control the plane. With an A380, you have to say to the computer, please, Mr. Computer, would you mind moving that flap for me so we can go over there? And then the computer decides whether it's going to do it or not. So he really does not like the A380. So a lot of your time when we spend driving or walking or moving around, or especially working, the mind is absent doing some other, thinking about other things. Hopefully while your body is still driving the car or working or doing whatever it is. And then mindfulness opposed to that is when you bring your attention back to the thing that you are doing. So that's how mindfulness gets portrayed. And that's true and that's real. That's certainly an initial stage of mindfulness, is to bring awareness to what you are doing. And it can be quite fun. It can be quite nice to walk mindfully. Right? I go and get my visa documents at Puttamonton, where they have the big park, right? And we walk around there. And it's about an hour and 40 minutes walk around. And I walk around with my friend Robin. Some of you know him. He gives talks here from time to time. And he's always so mindful, and he's like, oh, listen to that bird, and look at that monitor lizard, and that tree's grown. And I'm always thinking about kind of engineering and jumbo jets, and I'm always lost in my head, and he's always so mindful. So it can be fun. Applying mindfulness is bringing presence to what you are doing. And that is a form of mindfulness, and it's nice, and it's a good way to bring you out of the conceptual world, the maya, the conceptual world that most of us spend our time in. However, simply being aware of what you are doing is not mindfulness, not really proper mindfulness. For the main reason that mindfulness should be you are paying attention to yourself while you are doing something. So mindful walking around Puttamonton Park, one might portray as, well, you'd be mindful of the trees and the grass and the air and different things. It's nice clean air. I took him for a walk around there for the other day, hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, he's as bad as me as being lost in. We just spend the whole time talking and then found that we were back on the main road again to come home. So your attention goes out to the birds and the trees and the weather, and I think that's why we like going out for walks on beaches and forests, right? It snaps you out of your conceptual universe, hopefully, and makes you a bit more present with nature. But your attention is still all directed outwards, still looking at the birds and the trees. Mindfulness should be directed inwards. You should be aware of yourself while you are doing something. That was what was critical. So in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the classic Buddhist teaching, first area of mindfulness is your body. Being aware of where your body is, what your body is doing, and what your body is feeling. Right? Not lost with the birds and looking at the trees and the things. Even the way they teach mindfulness, be mindful of every footstep. Like your attention is still directed outwards. So you be aware of yourself while you are doing things. Right. So for example, this week, tomorrow morning I have to go and get my visa. This is always a month of anxiety for me. I think 3 times I've lost my visa. I've gone to get it and they've refused me and I've had to get out of the country. Yeah, you're looking at me like, why would they do that? But it's usually a document thing. One time my temple had given me the letter, but they use the computer and they copy the letter that they did last year and they forget to change the date. So one time the date was wrong on the letter. That was 2 years ago. Fortunately, I had another letter. Raprong TU is like a guarantee of your address, something like that. And the immigration said, yeah, we'll take that one instead. And they gave me my visa, but it was very close. A couple of times I lost my visa altogether. I had to leave, go and organize a new one. So a time of anxiety. So what happens? I think of the visa, and then I have a bodily reaction, usually here, like a queasiness in my stomach, like, nah, that will stay with me for a couple of weeks until tomorrow when I get it. And then I come hopping and skipping out of Jengwatanak. I treat myself to a taxi all the way home instead of trying to get public transport. And I feel that relief. So that's what we should be looking at, is not paying attention to the visa or what you are doing or sitting on the bus going there. Attention should be on you. This can be quite freeing because normally we're not trained or not taught to recognize or to see ourselves. We are taught to recognize a thing that's happening outside. So there was a story this week of a politician in England, a Labour politician, and he punched somebody and knocked him to the ground. And this is a big story in British newspapers. So what happens when you're feeling angry? Apparently the person threatened him or something, so he reacted by punching him. The attention is out. But if you are threatened and you're mindful, what you feel is your reaction. It's not simply that's a danger I'm going to hit. You should be feeling my reaction, my gut feeling, my anger, my resentment, my non-acceptance, my fear. And if you're mindful of that. We don't care too much about that outside. So mindfulness should be directed inwards. In the original, you had mindfulness of body, so aware of the body reactions and the feelings, where it is in your body that you feel these things. Mindfulness of liking and disliking, really important. It's one of the most freeing practices that I've ever come across. Mindfulness of liking and disliking, which means that you are able to sit with disliking something and just know that feeling. Like this, I don't like it. If you're not aware of the disliking it, you're simply caught in the story. So I think of visa, my stomach goes, I feel the disliking. I don't like this period of time. I can sit with the feeling of disliking and not be afraid of it. I can dislike people. I can dislike places. I can dislike food and not be caught up in the story about that, because I'm not afraid to dislike things. It's quite a big thing, especially for monks, because we have to pretend that we like everything. We have to pretend that we're peaceful and anything is fine and I don't mind. And of course I do mind. I like and I dislike things. You give me the food I like and I get enthusiastic. You feed me food that I don't like, then I'm a little less enthusiastic. I chant a little less vigorously. So to be aware of the liking and the disliking, and citta, so that's called Vedana, aware of liking and disliking. And citta means aware of your own mind. You know if the mind is bright or dull, happy or unhappy, expanded, contracted. You know if the mind is in greed, hatred or delusion. You know if the mind is in loving kindness or equanimity. You know your own mind. So I'll give you an example of this one time. It's one of the few times in my life that I gave advice and it worked. I'm really lousy with advice on anything. That really, my best advice is don't ask me. If you want sarcasm, I'm your man. But if you want advice, then really, I'm not very good at giving advice, and I've come across a few times where I've had big disasters giving advice. But this one time, there was a woman. She had lost her father. She was extremely close to her father, and he recently passed away, and she was really overwhelmed by the feeling of this. So much so that she had to stop her job. She was having trouble looking after her kids. She was thoroughly overwhelmed by this feeling, and she wanted to know how to stop this feeling, how to resolve the feeling. And she'd come on a meditation retreat, because that's what you do if you have a bad feeling. I'll meditate it away. That's a disaster, by the way, if that's your idea. A lot of people do that. Even works sometimes. But so this one bit of advice I gave her that actually worked, this is why it sticks in my mind. I said, rather than trying to get rid of this feeling of loss and guilt, I said, why don't you just turn around and pull it in, see if it can overwhelm you. So she did. She turned it around like, come on guilt, come on loss, see what you can do to me. And then she came back a day later and said, it's not that bad. This is knowing, not being caught in the story. If you're not aware of yourself, you will get caught in the story. If you are aware of yourself, you start to see things more realistically, and you lose your fear of those things. So she knows now that she can think of her father, remember her father. That feeling is not going to overwhelm her, because you have that resilience. I'm not afraid of feeling bad. I'm not afraid of disliking things. When it comes, I know it and I see it and I feel it. And I know that it's going to disappear. I know that it's going to circle around and come back again. And I'm still not afraid of it. So proper mindfulness is not just mindful of what you are doing. It should be mindful of you while you are doing things. Your attention, it kind of feels quite selfish that the practice now becomes all about me and my thoughts and my feelings. But that's where you don't know the thoughts and feelings of other people as much as you think you do. You really don't. But this you can know. So the idea of mindfulness as being mindful of what you are doing is not really correct. That's a good way to bring you out of the conceptual universe, Maya, delusion. It's a good step out, bringing yourself into the present moment, bringing yourself into raw experiencing, getting out of your head for a little while is a good practice. But that mindfulness needs to be turned back on yourself. You know yourself when you are doing things. You know yourself when you are reacting. Same for pleasure and happiness. A lot of things can, you think, give you great pleasure. Sometimes you apply mindfulness to it and you realize that thing that I do every day, I actually don't enjoy that much. I suspect that my friends who went to practice archery every Sunday, I suspect they're a bit sick of it. And I think they were going because they wanted to support each other. And I think there'll be some point in the future, one of them will just say, you know, I don't really like this anymore. And the other one will think, God, you said that. And then they can stop going to archery. I'm sure that's going to happen one day. Some of the things you think give you pleasure and happiness, you find actually are not really worth pursuing to that degree. I know one woman, Simone, you know her, right? And she said to me, we're talking about going out. And I said, I haven't gone out for 30 years. In fact, even when I was a layman, I didn't like going out. I presume going out means clubs and alcohol and dancing and loud music and all the things that I abhor. So I said, what do you like about going out? And she sat and thought about it. Came back like a week later. She said, you know, you asked me that thing about going out, what I liked about it. She said, the thing I really like about going out is getting ready to go out. Because she's there with her girlfriends and they dress up and they have fun and, you know, playing around with outfits and things. And she liked that more than actually being in a nightclub. So mindfulness applied also to the things that you like might start to change the things that you think that you like, and you find you like other things. So Joe here was just asking me what I liked about North America, having spent 3 months in Canada. And I come back with the answer, the thing that I really liked was the massage chair. The whole of North America, mountains and grizzly bears and salmon and lakes, and no, it's the massage chair that actually that was really nice. So mindfulness should start to change the things that you thought that you disliked. You might find that actually are not that bad. And if they are that bad, they're tolerable. You can actually live with it, look at it, face it, and not be overwhelmed by it. Letting people have the last word in arguments. This happens. There's another time I gave good advice, actually. It's twice. I really don't give good advice. Do you want some stories of my bad advice? You do? I'll think about which ones are appropriate. One person said to me once, I have really bad trouble with my boss, and I just can't stand my boss, and it's a terrible thing. And I said, well, can you like quit your job? Are you in a position to quit and find another job? That's how I said it. Did you note the body language? Well, are you like, that was how I did it. You know, if you can. Anyway, a week later she came back and said, I took your advice and I told my boss to get stuffed. It's like, wait, I did not say that. Anyway, it turned out to be a disaster. The job was one of the things that was keeping her sane, and things went from bad to worse. It's a long story, and it's hers to tell, not mine. So yes, it should mindfulness applied to yourself. This is when mindfulness is strong, is knowing yourself while you are doing things, seeing what your reactions are, seeing the things that you thought you liked. Do you really like them that much? I like that. You know Ricky Gervais? the comedian, he was writing The Office, the famous sitcom, with his writing partner, Stephen Merchant. And Ricky was mid-40s and Stephen Merchant was early 20s. So Ricky said, you know, the thing about getting old, how did he put it? He said, the thing about getting old is when we were writing The Office, Stephen was discovering hip-hop. I was discovering I've got a favourite chair. So yes, mindfulness applied, actually, the things that are really nice actually are quite simple things. The life should simplify to a large degree. You start to appreciate the simpler things in life because you are present for them. So the first myth about mindfulness is that it is applied to mindfulness of what you are doing. This is not correct. Mindfulness should be applied of you while you are doing things. The other myth about mindfulness is that it is non-judgmental, that we are supposed to allow everything to be as it is. And this is half true. It's half true. You allow things to be as they are because you are not fighting with the world, trying to arrange the world to be how you want it to be. You are trying to work with yourself so that you are content and happy with allowing things to be as they are. But it's not, this idea of non-judgmental awareness is not really correct. There was a fairy tale from Roman era called The Golden Ass, ass as in a donkey. And in it, the character was one of the origins of the Cinderella story. The character was given a pot of seeds, and some of the seeds were good and some of the seeds were bad, and the seeds were thrown on the floor, and her job was to pick out the good seeds from the bad seeds. This was what one does with mindfulness. This is not just Buddhist, this applies to life in general. Means that mindfulness is discriminatory. It knows what is useful and what is not useful. It tosses out the things that are not useful. It will accept or follow the things that are useful. So the seeds is a really good visual image to hold in mind. The Buddha said is like a gatekeeper. So you have a city, and around the city is a wall. On the wall is a gatekeeper. And the job of the gatekeeper is to allow good people to come into the city and to keep bad people out of the city. The gatekeeper doesn't need to worry about the king or the rules or the layout of the city. Doesn't need to worry too much about the city. The gatekeeper's only job is to let good guys in and keep the bad guys out. I'm just thinking, do you remember that some of you have been here for a long time? Do you remember that Thai immigration? Do you remember that? Good guys in, bad guys out was their slogan for Thai immigration a few years ago. So this was how the Buddha described mindfulness, to be like a gatekeeper. You let the good things in, you keep the bad things out. It is not non-judgmental or non-discriminatory awareness. Mindfulness should be exposing to you what is, okay, now good and bad, the words in the Pali was kusala and akusala. In Thai is gutson and aguson. It's not really good and bad. Good and bad in the Pali was papa and punya, what brightens or darkens. Kusala, akusala can be translated as wholesome or can be translated as skillful. So you know, with mindfulness, you know what thoughts and feelings are skillful and are worthy of being acted on. And you know what thoughts, feelings, perceptions, motivations are unskillful and should not be acted on. So mindfulness always in the Pali, in the original, was discriminatory. It separates what is good from what is bad. This was put into a teaching of the 4 right efforts. I'll go through these only in brief. If you want to, we can expand on it. But 4 right efforts that come right before right mindfulness are skillful qualities that have arisen, you try to maintain them. Skillful qualities that have not arisen, you try to arouse them. Unskillful qualities that have arisen, you try to abandon them. Unskillful qualities that have not arisen, you try to prevent them. So we can think of lots of examples for all of these, but I'm going to leave it there for the moment. I want to make clear, mindfulness is not non-discriminatory awareness. It should start to expose to you, to show you what is really worth pursuing and worth doing, and what is not worth pursuing and doing. So I mentioned about arguments and people argue. You never win an argument. And one of the big lessons that I learned with mindfulness is how to let the other person have the last word. Now I do it with a little bit of sarcasm because I'm English. But I will use phrases. I probably shouldn't tell you just in case I'm using them on you. But I have phrases like, okay, I see. It gives you... I'm not agreeing with the other person, but I'm just letting them think that I'm agreeing. Oh, I understand, or that's a very good point. Or, I'm going to really consider that. And then I go and do what I was going to do anyway. But at least they feel like they won the argument. How does it feel when somebody is giving you views and opinions that you don't agree with? Do you feel that? What about when you're blamed for something that you didn't do wrong? You want to write messages and you want to try and convince the other person that you didn't do something wrong? Yeah, it very rarely works. We had this with a venue that we used to use in Bangkok, and the manager of the venue was getting a little reluctant with us, I'm not sure why, and sent a couple of emails. And then, so some of the people in our group were getting ready to send emails back. I said, we don't need to reply. You can just leave it. They've had the last word. They've said what they think and what they expect. If you just leave it, nothing bad will happen. If you feel bad, you be mindfulness of that bad feeling. You can sit with it. It won't overwhelm you. This was something that was really empowering for me to learn, that thoughts and feelings will not overpower me unless I'm afraid of them. Unless I try and defend myself against it, it won't overpower me. Some years ago, a crazy Thai doctor told me I was dying. I'm not. He said I had lymphatic cancer, which I don't have. Or at least I'm still here 20 years later. I shouldn't call him crazy. That's a bit unkind, isn't it? But he was mistaken. And even that, even the thought of dying, even the end, like I now know that that feeling won't overpower me. So a big part of practice, the Dalai Lama once said, practice is knowing how you're going to die, or being ready for how you're going to die. When you're at that moment, your conceptual world vanishes. All the thoughts and grudges and dreams and aspirations are gone. You've just got that raw, present mindfulness. So one should be ready. There's a whole other topic. I don't know how we segued onto that, but there's a whole other topic. Being ready for when you die. So mindfulness, I'm going to leave it there. The way that it's presented as being mindful of what you are doing is not quite correct. You should be mindful of yourself doing it. Or you should be mindful of feelings, liking, disliking, mindfulness of your own citta, of your own mind. And also mindfulness of Dharma, principles. The second misconception is that mindfulness is non-judgmental. It was never non-judgmental in the scriptures, in the original. Mindfulness meant that you are separating what is skillful from what is unskillful. Yeah. Should be clear enough.
Time for some skillful questions.
If there are any. Right. So mindfulness is, there are supposed to be four, called satipatthana, or four foundations, or four bases. But they only ever teach the first three. They always miss the fourth one off. And Jeff was asking me about this. So the first one is Gaya, is body. The second one is Vedana, liking and disliking. Now, the normal translation is pleasant and unpleasant feeling. I have good reasons for saying it's not pleasant and unpleasant, it's liking and disliking, but that's another topic. Third one is Citta, knowing your own mind, bright, dull, happy, unhappy, expanded, contracted, greed, hatred and delusion, metta, loving kindness, equanimity. You know the state of mind that you are in. The fourth one is Dharma. And in the list for this is about 20 different clauses of Dharma. So 4 right efforts are in there, 4 noble truths are in there, the 5 spiritual powers are in there. There's a whole bunch of things in there. But what it means is you bear in mind Dharma principles. Again, they are discriminatory. They are to not to just allow things to be as they are, but to separate into what's a good quality, what's a necessary quality, what's the difference between different qualities. So Dharma principles are also a foundation of mindfulness. Yeah.
And the second question is, you were talking about not being afraid of feelings overwhelming you. What if a person has, for example, like panic attacks or PTSD or something like that? Are there any adjustments one must keep in mind?
So the question was, I mentioned of not being overwhelmed by feelings, but what if you get really overwhelming feelings? The main thing is that they won't overwhelm you. They may feel like it for a period of time, but then you adjust and you find a way around it. You will laugh again. You'll smile again. You'll feel free again. Sometimes you just have to remind yourself about that. As for panic attacks, they're getting more and more common these days. And I don't know if I should tell the whole story, but I had a few myself. I was really ashamed, and it was during COVID and there was nothing happening, and I sat in my room for several years, and then I started to get these palpitations, and I thought I was dying, and I went to hospital, and he said, "You're having a panic attack." I said, you can't be serious, I haven't done anything for years. And he said, "It doesn't matter, it can still come up from within." So when I learned to recognize it, oh, really? And then you feel it, you don't get overwhelmed by it, you know that it's going to come up, you know that it's going to disappear. If you can just hold that mindfulness, it won't overwhelm you, it can't. There was a story of I think it was a Japanese guy, and I'm not remembering the story very well, but he dug a big pit in sand. And I don't know if you know, but sand is quite dangerous, like if you dig it, because it collapses very easily. And he dug, I don't know what he was doing in a pit, I don't know. But this pit of sand had fallen on top of him, and he was buried alive. And he had a big hat, apparently, and he was covered in sand and he couldn't move because it's heavy, right? It can really pin you down. And the only thing he could do is wiggle his nose up and get a breath of air in his hat. And he knew that if he panics, he's dead. So the way he described it was just very mindfully. He would take a breath and sit there and stay there, not fight and not panic. Anyway, after about 5-10 minutes or whatever it was, people came and scooped him out and he was alive. But it's interesting that was his thought at that moment, is if I can just take a breath, that's all I need to do at this moment. Maybe there are times when you should panic. I mean, panic is there for a reason, right? Like Bangkok taxis. Maybe you should brace your knees and your hands against the chair in front. That might save your life. There may be times a little bit of panic is a good thing. But that was the thing with stress, right? Remember that book, Stressed, something about zebras? Anyone read that book? About like a zebra when it sees a zebra. I'm going to say it the English way. When it sees a lion, it's supposed to panic and run. That's what it's supposed to do. Stress does that to you. It's there for a reason. But chronic stress that you hold in you for long periods of time, your body is not equipped for it. And that chronic stress will poison you, will poison your system. There's a guy called Sapolsky. Has anyone seen him? He has a series of lectures on YouTube and had a good book, Why Zebras Don't Have Heart Attacks. Something like that. Anyway, so that was the point. Like, a panic might work in a short period of time, but you're not supposed to have these feelings for long periods of time. Executive stress does that, right? There was a study in that book, I think it was, of air traffic controllers. And they wanted to know who makes a good air traffic controller. Is it people who are easily stressed, or is it people who are not easily stressed? If you're not stressed, you're not taking the job seriously enough, because these planes are coming in every 30 seconds, right? Depending which airport you are at. I'm thinking of stories. But if you're not stressed, you won't make a good air traffic controller. But if you're too highly stressed, you're not going to make a good air traffic controller. So what they found was the people that got stressed during the job made better air traffic controllers if they drop the stress when they leave the job. If they don't carry it with them. So what they would measure during the training was the cortisol, I think it is, stress hormone. They would measure the peak cortisol levels while the person is working, and then they measure them after they've left work. And the people that could drop the stress then easily and not carried it with them, they were the ones that wound up making the better air traffic controllers. Yeah. There was a similar survey with Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. They were trying to figure out who makes good tank commanders for the Israeli army. And they came out with some similar metrics for what the qualities that you needed to be a good tank operator. Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. He doesn't need a microphone.
But that's something, that you always hear from mindfulness teachers in the West. Pay attention to what is happening now in the present, but don't judge it. And any idea where that came from, that idea of don't judge it? Because it doesn't make sense if you're, in a war zone and your house has just been bombed and two of your family members have been killed. How can you say, well, you shouldn't be judgmental? Or if you just won the lottery, I just won the lottery, you shouldn't judge it.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Any idea where this idea came from?
Well, it's because it's half right. It's half right that the first thing to note is Buddhism applies to what is experienced in the present moment. I don't like doing this. Is a Donald Trump thing, isn't it? I do not want to do that. By the way, next week's talk, being November the 4th, the day before the American election, is going to be Make Meditation Great Again. The conceptual universe is one thing, and we have to live in that universe. We have to decide wars and governments and do I buy a house, and we have decisions to make in the conceptual universe. But Buddhism applies to the thing that's what we call come up. So the thing that has come up right now in my conscious attention, that's what we're interested in. It's not about solving problems in the world or in life. If you do need to solve those problems, you can apply yourself in that conceptual universe. So what we're interested in is when you sit and you watch, something happens to you or nothing happens and something comes up. That thing is what's real. Now, if you fight it off, like I don't like this, I don't want this, and force it off, you're going to get yourself into trouble. So mindfulness should be allowing things to be there so that you can see them. So that's half correct. But you want to see them as they are in the moment so that you know, is it kusala or akusala? Is it appropriate or is it not appropriate? Should I follow it? Should I not follow it? So the insight should come from that. But just to say hold it non-judgmentally, no, you need the insight as well. You need to know your reactions to things, your thoughts, your feelings, your liking and disliking, your motivations. So it's half true, but a lot of Western Dharma, I think, comes from psychology, is pseudo-psychology, and very often not even good psychology. So, yeah, it seems to be something that's come up in the West. You wouldn't... there was two stories, quick stories I can tell you about this. One was in New Zealand. Some local thieves had worked out that when the temple rings the bell, all the monks go for chanting. And that's the ideal time to go and steal things from the monks' huts on the hillside. This being the world. So the Western monks that lived there, being Westerners, said, well, we're Buddhists, we're non-attached. We shouldn't lock our doors. If we lock the doors, it means we are attached to the things in our room. Well, of course you're attached to the things in the room. You can't let people go in and steal stuff. No Asian monk would think like that. Only a Westerner would think, I will practice non-attachment. And then the thing that they finally figured out was, this is the way they justified locking all the doors. They said, well, we have vital things like passports in there. So we have to protect them in order to comply with the law and have passports. You know, the mental gymnastics that you had to go through to do that. No Asian monk would think like that. That's the over-application of Westerners. So that's one example that a lot of Western Buddhists will get some principle and hang on to it far beyond its usefulness. Then my other friend is a Sri Lankan, and he was in the he was telling me in Sri Lanka that some fake monks came along to the town and were walking around with bowls asking people for money in the afternoon, and the monks heard about this and so they formed a posse. And you know the word posse, right? Like the Westerners in the Western, you know, the sheriff would gather a posse, and they all went down and caught these monks and gave them a good beating, and then dragged them off and dumped them in front of the police station and said they're not real monks. See? So they know what's right and wrong, and they know when you need to act and when you don't need to act, and they know how to beat someone up with mindfulness and loving kindness. So yeah, I think things get over-applied by Westerners sometimes. Yeah. Someone said to me, what if what if a baby falls into a lake and the crocodile's going to eat it and you have a gun? Do you shoot the crocodile? Because that's not loving kindness. Or do you save the... Like, where do people get these questions coming from? How often have you had a gun and a crocodile and a baby? Like, these... What... Just be mindful of what's come up. You'll know, usually, 99% of the time, is this a skillful thing or is this an unskillful thing? Yeah.
Sorry, this is
It does actually work, but...
No, it's the battery drops off all the time.
Okay.
2 seconds. You mentioned earlier equanimity. Judgment, equanimity. I thought equanimity is the
Can't
essence of
hear. Can you use the microphone?
It's not working, but I will repeat the question. He's saying, what about equanimity? The Pali word upeka, equanimity. Is that not non-judgmental? And it is. But equanimity is one of the qualities that you develop. Loving kindness and compassion, equanimity, mindfulness, truthfulness, effort, morality, wisdom, dana, giving. These are all qualities that you're supposed to develop. So again, if you take the word equanimity and over-apply it, then, well, I have to be equanimous about everything. Well, when your house is on fire and you're like, I'm just heat, hot, smoke, dying. I mean, equanimity doesn't apply in that thing. But it is a practice that you can do, that you can make. So, with mindfulness practice, the first thing, being mindful of what you are doing because it pulls you out of the conceptual universe. Second stage is being mindful of yourself doing things. Third stage is just mindfulness. Mindfulness was sati sampajanya. Sampajanya is your own awareness. Sati is to recollect. So through all things, despite what you are doing, you maintain this recollection of your pure awareness. So you're separating from the stuff that you're doing and the stuff of the world. Pure mindfulness is just this remembering your own awareness. That then goes into these stages of withdrawal. So the mind withdraws from perceiving one thing after another thing, jumping to my visa, my Dharma talk, my meal, my pension, my house, my partner. I don't have all these things, but I'm just thinking what you might have. The mind constantly going like this, from one thing to another thing to another thing. It's almost like a stage or a spotlight or a magnifying glass. Something comes in, psh, something comes in, psh, something comes in, psh. That's actually true, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your nationality or age. It's actually true that the mind works that way. And when you observe the mind working in that way, there comes a point where the mind withdraws from perceiving anything at all. It kind of occurs to you, what if I just stop this process of this thing, and then you withdraw into your own awareness, your own consciousness starts to show itself. So first of all, this requires effort. These are jhana states. It requires applied and sustained effort to hold attention, not allow it to go out. Then a piti, a rapture, will arise. Then that's second stage. Third stage, happiness arises because consciousness by itself, cleared of all objects, is naturally blissful and happy. It doesn't need anything added to it. And then you get equanimity. You get a state of I call it equipoise, because there's a pinpoint, pristine, it's like a chime, a perfect chime that just ding, and you're like, the mind just becomes like so pristine. So that was equanimity, or equipoise. The Buddha distinguished the equanimity of two kinds. He said one, equanimity based on diversification. and equanimity based on non-diversification, the technical terms. What this means is there is an equanimity base that arises when you stop caring. You just sit around in a chair. He's a good example. He's just come to Thailand. He's staying in a guest house not far from me. And he'll just sit there. I said to him, if you walk over there, there's some really nice artistic places and places to look at. They're a 10-minute walk from where he is. And I can see where he is on Google Maps. He just stays in, he just sits there. So the equanimity based on, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this. I'm sitting in my chair, a bit of YouTube maybe. That's not equanimity. Or it's what the Buddha called equanimity based on not caring or on diversification. Equanimity based on balance, pristine equipoise, is such a beautiful thing. But it's a quality that you develop in the appropriate time for it. Yeah. We're done. We're out of time.
That was excellent. I'll just give you some fast announcements. This is the end of the year, so we get into a kind of a break at Christmas. And if Pandit or Ren would like to correct me, but I think what's going to happen is we're solid with you through November.
Till the 18th
of
November.
18th of November.
So
okay.
3 more times, and then I'm gone.
Times, and then the world becomes uncertain, as it always is, isn't it?
I'll be gone for 6 months.
6 months.
Near enough.
Okay. You're also doing a retreat with Marissa on January 10th to 19th or something.
Yeah.
That would be worth considering if you're wanting to do a retreat with you. Dharma plus.
Right. Well, let's face it, Marissa gets more attention than I do.
Well, I'm not going to
She's
make
better
a
looking.
sarcastic remark. I'm not going to give you a sarcastic remark.
I'll repost it on Facebook if anyone's interested. It's a very beautiful lake down in the south of Thailand, and there are monkeys and massages and fantastic food and floating bamboo huts. It is rather expensive. Marissa said, manifest the funds. So that's a good way to do it. So if you have funds, I'll put the link up on Facebook.
Good. And Elijah, you might have another retreat coming up in December? Is there? Okay, so if you're interested in that one, talk to him. There's also something going on November 23rd with a lady named Prema. She's doing yoga breathing, and that's a Saturday, and it's going to be a whole day thing. So if you
Here.
Here. So that's the 3 things that are coming up. Afterwards, we're going to have a break from about this. I think the last actual meeting here is going to be December 16th, and we come back in the middle of January for another one. But once again, the best place to check on this would be the Little Bang.
Facebook and Meetup.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I still haven't fixed the website.
Trust, not announcements. Okay. As per usual, we're going to put the brown chairs in here. The white chairs, except for 6, go behind there. Okay. So, and equally important, if not more important, there's 2 boxes out there. One for Van Ari, who's generously providing this venue, and another for Pandit, who's generously providing us with his wisdom. Okay, so the 2 are equally meritorious. Okay, and Joe, you're going to talk about.
Some of us go to the other side of Soy 1 to the cafe, the cafe, to continue the conversation, and everyone is welcome to join.
Okay.
Okay, finish with the blessing. Sabitiyo vivachantu sabbarogo avinasatu mate bhavatwantarayo asukhidiga yuko abhava abhivadana silisa nichang vuddha bhajayino cha Taro Dhamma Vadanti Ayuvano Sukhang Balang. Okay, see you next time. If anyone has a question or comment, you're still welcome to come and chat briefly. Oh, really? In the in West End Buddhist Temple. Okay, cool. Okay. What are you doing here?
Next week I'm doing a retreat with Meiji Bridget.
Okay, cool.
And I want to do like lots of retreats, just go all over Thailand, retreats here and there, everywhere.
Cool. Meiji Bridget's great. Give her my regards. She's a good friend, but I very rarely see her. But yeah, it'll be a good time.
But I saw something online that you were going to do a retreat with her, maybe in some island, or I think that was canceled.
No, that's Marissa, not Meiji Bridget. Marissa's our Qigong teacher. Yeah. So yeah, that will be in January. Yeah. On the island. It's on the lake. Floating bamboo huts on the lake.
I'm not sure,
But it is pricey.
Thailand's pretty big, so I was thinking of like going north. I saw there's like a lot of retreat centers near Chiang Mai.
Chiang Mai is better. However, in the cold season is the burning season. It used to be okay. November, December, January is usually okay. Like February onwards starts to get the smoke season. But there's some really good places up in Chiang Mai. That's the place to go. But you'll probably meet a few people at Meiji Bridget's. They can point you to different places. Okay. What's your name?
Martin.
Martin.